Hey, welcome back to Music Theory Logic. My name's Andrew, and today is going to be another music theory breakdown. I'm pretty excited about this one. I like all the songs I break down, but some I like more than others, and this one had me laughing while I was making it. We're going to be talking about ABCDEFU by GAYLE. Let's go ahead into the logic session. So here we are in my recreation of this track. If you haven't seen one of these before, I'm not going to play the original audio. That's because I don't have the copyright. I encourage you to pause the video and go listen to this song wherever you listen to music. Support it on social media. If you find that you like this song, the goal of this video is to show you some of the music theory, the chords in it, the drum groove, where those notes come from, so that you can better understand music that you like or music that you're making. So if you find these helpful, you would help me out a ton by subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, here's my recreation of the instrumental ABCDEFU by GAYLE. Cool. So again, it's quite empty without the main vocal, but the benefit to that is that you can hear and focus on what's happening in the instrumental. It can be really hard on these popular songs because the vocals are so hot in the mix, and we get caught up in the words, the message, which is the whole point of the song, but it can be hard at first when you're trying to analyze the full structures, or everything at the same time. Let's go ahead into the music theory. This song is in the key of E major. E major has 4 black keys, otherwise known as accidentals. Those in order from low to high are going to be F sharp, G sharp, C sharp, and D sharp. That means the notes we have are E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, and E. It sounds like this. Nice. Now you may notice that sounds like a bunch of other major scales. That's really like an important element. That's fundamentally what music theory employs, but every scale that we have that is a major scale has the same formula, or in other words, the same distance between notes. So it's like taking the whole thing and moving it up or down. The only difference between C major and E major, which is why I think the computer makes this so helpful. I talk about this sometimes in these videos, but I wrote a really, really simple music theory text linked below. If I get any critiques, it's that it's far too simple, but that was really like my goal, to make it like seem really like simple and elementary. Music theory is pretty simple. If you know your major, minor scales, your chords, and basic drum grooves, you can produce a tons of different styles of popular music. That method also comes with downloadable files that you can use in your programs. So it's more of an interactive method than a text. The chord progression in this song is basically the 1 chord, E major, the 3 chord, which is a G sharp minor, the 6 chord, which is a C sharp minor, and the 4 chord, which is an A major. That is a 1, 3, 6, 4 chord progression. Now, what's interesting is we omit, or we leave out the thirds of these chords. So that full chord progression sounds like this: E major, G sharp minor, C sharp minor, A major. In reality, we're getting this. So in addition to just the rhythm added in there, so that's steady eighth notes, we're leaving out the middle note. We also would call that the third from each chord. So every middle note here, we're leaving out. Now, this is really common in lots of different rock and roll music. Anytime you're adding distortion to a signal, it really muddies up the even ability to hear that middle note. So you don't need it as much if you're playing electric guitar and you have a ton of distortion on it. If you play a major chord or you play a power chord, it feels very similar. Over here, when we do leave out the third, we call these power chords. Another way of thinking about it is it's a fifth interval. So E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So these distances are a fifth. So that's basically what's happening. Let's go through each section. So the guitars that you're hearing are guitars that I recorded. I charted in all of the MIDI so that we could talk about it, but again, what you're hearing is the performance with guitar, especially computerized or VSTs doing guitar is really recognizable as not being real unless you work really hard to make it have lots of natural feel to it. And since I love playing guitar, I just wanted to play guitar on it. So this is going to be a pretty quick breakdown. The track is somewhat minimal. It really employs dynamics. So dynamics in music is the difference between something being soft in volume and loud in volume. And this song really doesn't have any bass except in the hook sections. It doesn't have much drums or big drums in the other sections. So what that does is it makes it, when she sings the ABCDEFU and it goes into the hook, it gets huge. And the drums and the bass instruments from the song are very computer or very like, producer sounding, not like a live band. But the guitar itself sounds pretty live. So the guitar on its own sounds like this. I have it doubled, so the same thing on another channel. So one of the things about that, I tried to mimic what I heard. I'm playing all the power chords on the E string, so on the lowest string. So I start at the 12th fret, and I slide down to the G sharp, which is 4th fret in standard tuning on the guitar, on that last note, and you kind of hear the slide right here and here. And that subtle that nuance to the guitar playing is really why I did it live. It's easier to do that, again, if you play the instrument. The next thing we hear are the drums and this subtle top end guitar. This makes such a huge impact, but it's so simple. This is literally one note. I'm playing the note E. We start on the E chord. We're in the key of E. I'm playing the note E on the guitar, but on the thinnest string at the 12th fret, so an octave above where it's tuned. It has some delay in it, a lot of reverb, and that makes it sound pretty big when that enters. Here's with that one E note. It's pretty amazing how just not even like adding a new note to your song, but just adding an interesting tone can really go a long way. So sometimes when you're thinking about like, I have this song and it sounds really good, but it feels like it's just missing something, a lot of times when you're earlier into production, you'll try to write new things. A lot of times you don't really need to write something new. You could just add the same note, like in this case in E, but in a different way, and that really makes the tone bigger. So the drums sound very programmed or computerized. We're at 122 beats per minute. We have a halftime backbeat. So what that means is the snare is on beat 3. That happens every measure. Our kick drum is going kick on 1, the kick on the last 2 eighth notes, so on 4 and, the kick on beat 2, the next measure. Then that pattern repeats. So kick on 1, kick on the last 2 eighth notes, kick on 2, and then we get an additional kick the second time. So this is a 4-measure drum sequence. And that second time, we get some syncopation, or the kick happens on the 8th note after the snare. The drums on their own sound like this. With that guitar. And with the lead. Cool. On the topic of tone, there's an additional guitar that gets added there. I have more distortion on the signal, which is what it sounds like the original has, and then it's playing something different. It's playing whole notes, so literally the same chords, just ringing them out for 4 beats instead of strumming the 8th notes. That adds a lot. Sounds like this. Here's without it. So much. Now the drums change right there. This is basically the pre-chorus, and the drums go to a 4 on the floor feel, and that is really common. It gets most people in most cultures dancing. 4 on the floor is pretty easy to follow. It's the basis for a lot of electronic music. So, and it's really simple to do. You just put the kick drum on every quarter note. If you're in a 16th note grid, which you're looking at right now, it's basically the first of every group of 4. So 4 16th notes. Cool. The that again is standard. It repeats the whole time up until 2 measures before the big section where the drums cut out the first time. The snare stays in that halftime backbeat. So that makes the 4 on the floor feel a lot different than, let's say, your typical house music where the snare is going to be on 2 and 4. That 4 on the floor section has the whole notes, the 8th notes, all of the 8th note guitar, and so it's really just building. We're hearing more stuff. It sounds like this. So it's really 1.5 measures that it cuts out for. So cool. The drums changing there, it works in a lot of different styles of music. You'll notice the energy changes a lot if the drum pattern changes like that. And because there's more kick drums, it kind of gets the energy bigger and foreshadows this next big section. So they cut out, again, 1.5 measures before the drop section. And we hear these very like electronic sounding uplifters. And I built those in inside of Serum. So the first one I called a laser drop. It's going down in pitch subtly. Change that actually. There we go. So it's dropping down, and then the uplifter is this. It's going up. Cool. So again, both of those are built in Serum. Let me know if you want me to do breakout videos on those. I don't think they're like the perfect sounds, but they function, and the timing is the same as the original. And in context, those sound like this. us into what is kind of the drop of this instrumental, or the hook section. It's where the bass comes in. Everything's as big as possible, and we get our first lead instrument, which is another guitar sounding instrument. So the drums are essentially very, very similar. So we get the halftime backbeat, that stayed the same. Kick goes to just on the downbeat. So kick on one, kick on the next one, kick on one, kick on the next one. So every downbeat. Then the kick, we get the last quarter note, beat 4. Cool, that covers the kick and the snare. We then get a crash cymbal on beat 1. Those drums on their own sound like this. With the 8th note, I should do that slight fill sound. There's a percussion sort of sound that happens on the very last 8th note of the 4th measure. That's what we heard there. All right, not a lot going on there. With the original guitars, it sounds like this. Cool. Let's talk about the other stuff. I have a bigger snare here. This is a Contact Damage by Heaviosity. I've done a breakout video on this a long time ago, so check that out. And then we get the bass, and the bass here is doing the root notes of our chords. So E, then G sharp, then C sharp, then A. So that's the 1, 3, 6, 4 from the scale. They're happening for just shy of half notes. So it's basically like 1/16 note short of a full half note. That with the drums sounds like this. So since we haven't heard a big sub before, again, dynamics, the biggest trick to making something feel huge when you're making a beat or making a song, working with an artist, is to make something else feel really small. Our brains are constantly making calculations when we listen to music, and go back and think of like the loudest record you can imagine, or something that you heard in a car and had some crazy power to it. If you listen to the section right before it, chances are you're going to notice that it's not very loud. It perhaps could be noisy, but doesn't have a lot of bass sounds. So that's what makes the bass feel huge at that next section. All sorts of styles of music rely on that. The last thing to talk about, besides the drum change that happens in the second verse, is the lead instrument. So the lead, it's a guitar. You're not hearing this MIDI. I had it muted, but it in essence is doing notes from the chords. So where we were playing the power chords, now we're using the third. So the melody goes E, G sharp, E, G sharp. So that's like 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3. Then we go D sharp back to G sharp. So that's 5, 1 for the next chord. 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 1. Then we go down to our C sharp. This is 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 5. Notice that the note that is consistent between those three chords, the G sharp, happens in all three of those measures. And then we go to 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 1 for our A major. So this is also the same as the second chord with regards to the notes it's playing from the scale. So yeah, I think that is pretty low in the mix. If you go and listen to that section, you will notice it. I'm playing that on the guitar. That sound on its own sounds like this. Now that's my live playing. If you hear the MIDI, you'll know instantly why I played it. It kind of works in context. But it just doesn't sound as good as the live. that again, the guitar in the song, it's pretty simple. If you are a producer in whatever style of music, I think learning a little bit of your instrument of choice can be really helpful, because even if you can just play simple things, doing that simple live thing adds a lot to music, especially when everything else is controlled by the computer and a lot more perfect. Now, when we come out of the next section, we start to get cymbals. And the cymbals are doing basically eighth note pattern. Not all of the eighth notes, but close. We've got let's see, 4 eighth notes in a row, then not having 2, then 2 in a row, then 1, skipping 1, 2 in a row, skipping 2, then 2, skipping 1, 2, or sorry, 3 in a row, skipping 1, 4 in a row, nothing on the last measure. So everything else in the drums has stayed the same. It's important to note that these eighth notes are swinging. I have the swing of 27 at eighth note on. You really notice it when it's the steady eighth note. So after 4 measures in the second verse, we go to the steady eighth note groove. So aside from that one change in the instrumental, the instruments are the same as verse 1. I mean, besides the vocal, I guess, if you consider a vocal instrumental. But aside from the words changing, and the only other thing that's changed is that we have steady eighth notes on the cymbals. So this goes back into dynamics. There's a really, this section is really small. There's no drums. This section's quite small. There's no cymbals. This section's bigger, has more kick drum. This section is huge because it has a sub, bigger snare, a lead. We go back to the small section, but instead of it being super small, we add the cymbals. It's that simple. That's all that's changed. We then have a slightly smaller structure. We get a 4 bar of the 4 on the floor, as opposed to almost 8 bars the first time we have it. So that the arrangement has gotten smaller. That helps, because it'll make it even more exciting when we get to the big section slightly early. And besides that, everything else is the same that we've heard. So this section's identical. Halfway through this final hook section, we get cymbals that come back. They're on beat 2 and 4. Not a lot, but it makes it bigger. Cool, and that is basically covers every element from the song. So I know that the mix and the quality of the instrumental is not on par with, or not as good as, the original track. When I make these videos, I'm trying to get all the notes right so that we can talk about where they come from. Again, I don't have the rights to the original, so if I spent my time getting the mix perfect, perhaps wouldn't be the best allocation of my time. Hopefully it was good enough to keep you watching till now. If you found this helpful, you would help me out a ton by subscribing to the channel. Be kind to your fellow human being, and if you subscribe, I will see you next time. Have a wonderful day, and remember, making music is fun, so keep doing it. Cheers.